is 3 o'clock in London, a very good afternoon in London, and a very good evening, people in Malaysia and elsewhere. I don't know, but here we are. We have delivered what we said we would do our first webinar, and today in London, in this place called the Hippodrome, we are kindly hosted by our community here, and the Hippodrome is located in the west end of London.
Hi, I'm Voon. Pleasure to meet everyone.
Hello everyone, welcome to this talk by MAUK, and we've got an expert, Voon, who will give us a talk on the recent budget in Malaysia. And I hope you enjoy this. If you have any questions at the end, please feel free to ask him. And I'll hand this over to James.
Thanks, Francis. Thanks, Edmund. Very well welcome, obviously, everybody. Here we are in London, and MA colleagues who are delivering the talk. Voon's actually based in KL. Whatever time it is now, probably quite late, I think, nearly 11 o'clock. So, and for those who are joining us for the first time, we hope you enjoy the talk as much as I know I will. Voon's an expert on the topic. I think even for those of us who are living abroad, it will be very good to know, I think, how the new Malaysian budget can have an impact on us here. So without further ado, I shall hand over the mic to Voon. Over to you, Voon.
Thank you very much, James. Very good evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in. And I'd like to thank my colleagues at MAUK for giving me this opportunity to share on the budget that was recently announced in October. Especially to thank Edmund and the MAUK committee, Program Committee, of which I'm part of, for this opportunity to just share some thoughts. Before I me bring up the slides first, before I go into the details, I just like to say that I'm not an expert. I probably was asked to do this because free, no need to pay any fees to a consultant to do this presentation. And I probably do not know the budget as much as a few of you in the room. So take that with a pinch of salt. However, I have read the recent budget. I have been following track with the previous ones that we had in the recent years. And I'm just here to give you some of the highlights that I thought are important for you in the UK. And it is actually designed in such a way where it's also applicable for any Malaysian or parties that are interested in Malaysia on what they need to take note of that came out in this budget announcement. So that's just a general overview for me. Okay, let's jump into it because we don't have that much time. All right. So the target audience for this, just let me point it out. We are opening it to basically we are focusing on the Malaysians, obviously, that are living abroad with ongoing and prospective business interests in Malaysia. So you are overseas, but you may have certain interests or ongoing interests that you have there. Maybe you have assets, maybe you have family assets or certain businesses that you are managing from the UK, but you have it ongoing there. Of course, this applies to non-Malaysians who have the same arrangement. They may have a business in Malaysia, but they are based in the UK. I also like to give a slight focus on young Malaysians that are abroad. So I'm talking about those who have just graduated or still studying, if there's any tuning in. There are a couple of slides that are focused on you. And there's actually also a little bit on civil servants. There's obviously they are members of the High Commission that are there, Matrade. So if there's any government personnel in the room, this might interest you as well. Okay, so what can we tell from this budget? Before we jump into all that, let me just give a disclaimer that this announcement is not detailed. None of the announcements are detailed. Some of the things will be revealed to us in the coming weeks, coming days. Right now, the Parliament session, they're grilling the various ministers and the Prime Minister on what does certain things mean. For example, T15 came up, and it seems that many people who consider themselves poor, they are falling under T15. because it's grouped not as an individual, it's grouped under household. So the bigger the household, you actually might be at 15% and you are not eligible for subsidies. So these are some of the things that are keeping people alarmed. Also, you have to take note that this budget is still, this is not set in stone. It's just a proposed budget until it is actually voted in, which we expect to happen sometime in late November or early December. It's likely to pass, because if it's not, then Anwar actually, in principle, has to resign. It will be seen as a non-confidence vote if it doesn't pass. And also take it with a pinch of salt that not all budgets are followed. More often than not, they are over budgeted, they're overspent. So just take that with a pinch of salt, yeah. Okay, what we will discuss is the things that are announced that affect Malaysians living in Malaysia. So I wanted to come up with content that's more relevant for the audience in the UK. So we won't be talking about the subsidies in education, healthcare, social protection, and so on. Those things you can really read it yourselves in the PDF copy that is been circulated by the Ministry of Finance Malaysia. But we will be covering these things, yeah. Okay, so what can we tell from this budget? This is the largest budget that we have, a very clear expansionary fiscal policy budget. It's even bigger than the one that was announced in 2021. And that you have to remember that was COVID year, unless you include the supplementary budgets. But yeah, is the biggest that we ever have. In terms of expenditure, in terms of development expenditure, it's big. And the strategy that the government is putting in place is to reduce fiscal deficit. So a lot of the mechanisms is basically to reduce the amount that every budget the government takes on a certain debt, but they are trying to reduce that cycle. So eventually we predict that will go from a budget deficit into one that is a surplus. So that is just to give us a little bit of fundamentals to give business confidence to investors. And of course, is to revitalize the economy and make it even stronger, ultimately for the people's well-being. All right, so let's jump into the main goodies that we have. And I gotta say, there are some parts of it that are not so good. There's some parts of it that are okay. So let's go with the easy to bite ones first. For those of you who live abroad, who have shares in Malaysian shares, you will be subjected to tax if your dividends exceed 100,000. So it was a 2% charge on your dividend profits. So we're not sure how they're going to do that yet. Maybe they're going to tax the dividends before they give it to you, or they do it the old-fashioned way. You have to just declare it yourself. So we're not so sure how this one works yet. The exemptions for your EPF dividends from the unit trust, from the dividends from PNB, and of course, if you have shares, you probably do shares from overseas, your dividends from those shares are not taxed. It's only the Malaysian company shares dividends if it hit 100,000. Okay, so this is also a sign that they are targeting those that have more money to give away. Yeah, so that's one trend that we'll talk about later. Okay, here are the not so nice parts of the budget. And well, the budget has been criticized for many things, and this is one of the main ones. It is seen as a budget that will put burden on businesses. All right, and I'll talk about the implications of that in a short while. So I don't want to go through everyone in detail, but there'll be charges in your water, electricity. You might have heard that they're reviewing your petrol subsidies and diesel subsidies, reducing it. And while it might sound that's targeted towards the T15, right? But it also applies to businesses. And what that will basically do is when petrol costs increases for businesses, it will be passed on to other sectors of the economy. It trickles down. There are mechanisms, they're proposing some mechanisms to soften that blow, but I'm not sure, only time will tell whether it is sufficient. If you own a F&B in being in the UK, own one in Malaysia, you will be seeing a SST increase on premium non-essential items. Okay, so the Prime Minister has quoted things like avocado and salmon, but I'm not convinced that these are actually non-essential items. So we might see even the B40 affected, because I don't know, salmon is something that's you can find in any store. So it might put pressure on the prices on basic cost of livings. Of course, the scarier parts is like taxation. There will be a global minimum tax. This is already ongoing, but we are basically seeing it continue. And there'll be additional service taxes that will be expanded for new services such as B2B transactions. And there will also be a sales and service tax that's going to be imposed on financial services. So we do not know what exactly they are yet, but we suspect it will be things like unit trust earnings, maybe your insurance premiums might have been taxed as well. So these are the ones we're not sure of yet. The details are not released to us yet. Labor costs, there'll be a levy for foreign workers. So yeah, if you have businesses that employ foreign workers, this will definitely affect you. And the minimum wage, while it's a good thing that we are increasing the minimum wage, the reality is it will affect employers in terms of costs. So these are just some of the things that we have to think note of. Things in the works. I'm sure in the UK you already have these two things: carbon capture, utilization. This is being discussed. It will increase costs for businesses as well. One of the things that didn't come up that we expected in this budget, but really somehow didn't materialize, is the inheritance tax. It was not applied, implemented in the end, or not proposed yet. While you might think the inheritance tax applies only to individuals, actually some family businesses will be affected by the inheritance tax. So yeah, you have to pay attention to this as well. This will be quite significant. Yeah. Okay, so bad news is done. Let's go to the good news. There'll be income release there'll be tax exemptions for sources of income coming from abroad. So if you're in UK, if you have business dealings in Malaysia, your Malaysian partners will feel more comfortable dealing with you because they are given a tax exemption for the money they make from abroad. So this can be a selling point to you. That, oh, you deal with us in Malaysia. You deal with us here in London. You'll be given, a tax exemption. So these are some of the selling points you can do. In terms of logistics, to counteract the effects that I mentioned earlier, multinationals, corporations, multinational enterprises are given a double tax deduction in terms of straightening the supply chain. So this I'm not so sure how they're going to do it. Some of these things they just mentioned in broad terms, but we'll wait for a bit more details. And there'll be a 60% investment tax allowance also for implementation of smart logistical tools. Okay, what else? Progressive tax will also be continued. It's already ongoing. This is where if you increase the salary of an employee, the government will absorb your cost. But registration is required, and I understand that it's not easy to get. There'll be sustainability initiatives. There'll be rebates given to businesses if you employ energy transition mechanisms or things of that sort. Okay, moving on. F&B owners. Yes, earlier I mentioned that there'll be costings, but at least one positive thing that came out is the price of the PM mentioned the price of chicken, poultry it'll be floated. So this was a pain point for a lot of eateries because they are absorbing the cost on behalf of the consumer. So with this float is actually better for businesses in the end. And if you're running a business from overseas with companies in Malaysia, if you implement flexi work arrangements, you will be given a 50% tax deduction for capacity building areas and also on procurement software. Okay. So let's move on. So sorry, I forgot to mention that the top here it would be a legend on who it applies to. So Malaysians and non-Malaysians living abroad. So it applies to both categories, yeah. Okay. There will also be opportunities for both Malaysians and non-Malaysians abroad. So naturally, the government is trying to encourage a lot of initiatives to bring in foreign investment. And the highlighted one that got a lot of attention in this budget is the new investment incentive framework. And it focuses more on the electrical engineering and tech space. But others included also are the areas of chemicals and medical devices. So if you're a business in the overseas that are in this area, collaborating with a Malaysian-based partner will be beneficial. So yeah, so the multinationals that are already here, they also be given an income tax deduction for the amount they invest with joint venture projects. Okay, so there's also the Strategic Co-Investment Fund, and this is to support the initiatives for the new industrial master plan that was launched last year. So have a look at that. There's also the Bank Negara's central bank's foreign exchange administration policy, and this is to streamline the transfer of cross-border financing and currency. So have a look at that as well, how you can apply. Okay, going down to other things. This applies to Malaysians, and I'm not so sure whether it applies to non-Malaysians that are abroad, but there are a lot of revitalization initiatives. For example, there are allocations to the small, medium enterprises to basically scale up, to even bring their businesses abroad. And I think it's mentioned later on. So this one, the Exporter Sustainability Incentive Scheme. So it's just to help the small businesses try to sell abroad. So maybe to set up an e-store and then maybe set up links. So Matrix will be helping in that administration. Yeah. And if you have migrated to the UK, but maybe you have a few properties, commercial properties in Malaysia, small holdings in palm oil, rubber, there were specific announcements in this area as well. So they're trying to revitalize this area to basically compete and to meet up the demand in the for commodities. So there are actually announcements for educations and incentives for palm oil, and even for rubber plantations. There is a land lease scheme. Essentially, they will encourage you to lease out your land to somebody to manage your rubber plantations. So if you are in that sphere, maybe this is something that you can look into. And of course, I know palm oil, the use of palm oil is very taboo in Europe, but they're actually giving money to do for you to do a PR campaign to basically promote palm oil. So yeah, a few opportunities here. Okay, let's move on. All right, so now I want to cover areas that might interest the young Malaysians, and this is of course for your consideration. Yeah, those that are living overseas. The budget doesn't specifically say they didn't specifically use the talent core the selling point, like trying to woo Malaysians back home to work in Malaysia. But I see this as indirect ways of them attracting you back. So for the first one is things for women, initiatives for women. There's a income tax deduction exemption of 50% for employers to hire women back into the workforce. There are requirements to that. You need to be inactive out of the workforce for 24 months. You need to have earned a certain salary of a certain level of income. This ones you can look at the Talent Core website for the requirements. So have a look at that. And of course, if you are overseas and you're thinking of coming home to set up a business, and you're a woman, you'll be given financing for working capital and purchase of assets. Yeah, so these are something that things can consider. And the next point actually is very similar. The government is allocating finances for entrepreneurship and startups. They're getting a few GLCs to provide the funding required for encouraging Malaysians to set up new businesses, because they are encouraged by a lot of examples of Malaysian businesses that have made it big, they went abroad, and that's actually the real income earner for the country. The ones that do well and are able to go abroad to set up subsidiaries or branches, these are the real income earners for the country. So that's in a small way, where the government is trying to say, like, this is what we're trying to encourage. Okay, and of course, mirroring the entrepreneur startup, the government is also giving funds for your ICT and your digitalization, automation processes, trying to help you reduce costs without hiring too many employees. And of course, for our young viewers, there is always something on housing, and every year there's something on housing, and they have special emphasis for youth through the Step Up Financing Scheme. Okay. Okay, I got only 3 minutes left according to my clock, so we're going to go a bit quicker. Um, so the budget touches on a lot of other things, but it's too little time to mention everything. But there are opportunities in these few areas that the budget has mentioned on AI adoption and development. So semiconductors, if you might have known, we are trying to be the new Taiwan, attracting the semiconductors companies to come. So and so on and so forth. All these areas, the government is putting attention to in these sectors. So how does it affect you? How would it be an opportunity for you? So all these things have supply chains. They require certain services, certain expertise, certain product designs, or certain products itself to make up their value chain. So this is an area where for you as businessmen there, you probably know how this game better than I. You have to look into these small areas and see like what kind of gaps are there in the market of which the government is trying to look into, and how can I exploit and provide these projects or services. So but it's likely that if you are a non-Malaysian, a foreign-based individual or company, you will probably need to work together with somebody in Malaysia to tender for these projects. So this is just the reality of the situation. Yeah. Yeah. So have a look. There's a few things that are listed down here where you can look for opportunities. Okay. I also really want to cover this part about civil servants. I don't know if there's any there at the moment, but every budget there will be something mentioned about civil servants, and it's usually about an increment. Actually, I know recently gave a nice increment to civil servants just a few months ago. So this is another announcement. So okay lah. So there'll be a salary adjustments for execs and management of the 50%. Top management is proposed that the 7% increase will be given. And all civil servants will be given this thing called Bantuan Kas Kewangan. Basically, it's a 500 ringgit allowance, for those who are grade 56 and below. Yeah, so more salary. Housing, there's even those that are based overseas, you have to come home one day. There's actually a specific fund for you, which you can tap into. And I believe it's a very low interest fund where you can take on home financing for up to 40 years. What else? Okay, so civil servants are also given continuous learning schemes where if you are taking on a course, you take an executive program or master's, the government is actually willing to cover your costs, your tuition fee costs up to 50% or a maximum of 15,000 ringgit. So something for you guys there. If you're a pensioner, if you're retired, but you've gone to the UK to settle down, you still get something actually. So the government is actually going to give you a special appreciation payment for your services to the country. And pensioners are also given will be given the Bantuan Kas Kewangan. So basically this is another allowance and top up. So yeah, a lot of things happening. Okay, I'm going to be concluding soon. My last slide. What we see from this budget and what we notice. So this time, there's no major projects announced. Usually there is, but it may not be necessarily be a bad thing. People look forward to mega projects because there's a lot of spillovers and a lot of projects that come out from these single mega projects, but not the case this time. But there are small ones, there are ongoing ones, and I suspect that the government basically is trying to not stretch itself because they're trying to be more fiscally responsible. So there are ongoing projects. There are like the LRT that's coming up in Penang. That one is still ongoing, and that will require a lot of attention. this is a wealth redistribution budget. So essentially, the government is trying to focus on sources of income where they perceive to not they believe that these individuals or these businesses won't suffer if we give them a tax. Okay, that's why some people have been calling it a Robin Hood budget. You steal from the rich and redistribute it to the poor. So I don't have an opinion on that yet, but I understand Anwar's intentions where he's trying to find in money from somewhere and trying to help those that actually need it. So I'll give him that due credit where it's due. However, as I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, this will increase the cost of business. So if the intention is to basically reduce the burden of the people, increase welfare, the increase in cost of business, which will spill over into other goods and services, it will come back to the customer in the end because there will be inflation. So the implementation of it is still questionable. Okay. What else is there? Let me end by saying this, where credit is due. Anwar has taken a very brave step because budgets are very often seen to be very political. Yeah, so they are very pleasing to the people, so they give a lot of goodies. But by doing that, it's actually quite fiscally irresponsible. So there may be a lot of pains in this budget, but I believe Anwar has actually taken the right step to introduce a lot of these mechanisms to make sure that the country is on the right footing for the future. And although it's a unstable government, because if GPS or Marisa pulls out, the government collapses. But Anwar has been brave to do this reform, these implementations and measures, and it will basically lead to stronger fundamentals for the country. And stronger fundamentals means we're more resilient, and that's the real formula for growth in the future. So yeah, I hereby conclude my presentation. I thank you for listening, and yeah, I'd like to open the floor for any questions that you might have, and I'll do my very best to answer, and I cannot promise if I have all the answers as well. Thank you. Emma, you're muted. Yeah.
Unmute. No, he has.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Voon, from London, and from people on the Zoom. I will pass it on to Francis and James to moderate the Q&A session. Remember, the time check now is 3:30, so we got about 15 minutes. Over to you guys.
Hi, Voon, can you hear me?
Yeah, can indeed.
Voon, just one question. When you spoke about the 100,000, the tax, the 2% of the 100,000 dividend, is the 100,000 a cap and anything above 100,000 is taxed, or is it your tax from the first 100,000?
Sorry, but I think I wasn't clear. It's 100,000 and above. So if you earn dividends of 100,000 and above, you'll be taxed.
Oh.
Malaysian dividends are Malaysian-based dividends. Yeah.
So if you earn 90,000,
you're not taxed.
First 100K below. Only first 100K and
below
above.
100K,
you don't get taxed.
After
Yeah.
99, you're not taxed.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you earn 99,000, 9,900, 99 ringgit, no tax. But we don't know how they're going to do it yet. Actually, I highly suspect the easiest way for them to do it is they tax you first, and then when you submit your income tax returns, then you redeem it back. But we're just not sure. Doing that also has its pros and cons because there'll be service charge into that will be considered by the various companies. So we're just not sure how they're going to do it yet.
So if you earn 101,000, give me the 1,000, you take
Yes.
100,000, okay?
99.8.
Well, the second question is, you mentioned 500 to the civil servants. Is that 500 a month or 500 a year?
I believe it's a year.
So yes,
Let me go back.
Okay, thank you, Voon.
A year. Should be
I'll
a year.
hand it over to James if he's got any questions. And thank you for having done this talk. It was very well done and very clear. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Voon, first of all, thanks for the a quick gallop through, the Malaysian budget. I don't have any particular question. Actually, safe to say, your concluding remarks about, our Prime Minister's budget, and some has called it the Robin Hood budget, because we in the UK have recently, unveiled. The new Labour government has unveiled the budget as well. I mean, I'm sure some in this room might say that itself is also a Robin Hood budget, because the government is raising quite a lot of tax from businesses and all that. And clearly the argument would always be, well, if you pass it to the business, a business owner will ultimately pass it to the consumer anyway at the additional cost. Is that your view as well of this sort of situation?
Yeah, it's my view as well, and I foresee that happening because it has happened before, and I've roughly gone through the situation with the UK budget. I'm not sure how they're going to countermand that, because there are mechanisms in place. For example, Malaysia, when the government was anticipating that businesses will increase their prices of goods and services, they will put a cap to it. The price control mechanisms in place, and if you breach that pricing, businesses are liable to a fine. So there are ways to do it, but it will still increase. But it will still lead to an overall increase. But free market theorists will argue that people will adjust. They will maybe drink less sugary drinks. They'll probably stop buying items they don't need. But that also is a triggering effect. So businesses might lose out a bit more. So the adjustment is the scary part. And but after a while, things might settle down and be okay. We just don't know yet. Yeah.
Thanks, Voon. Yeah, the second one is a question on the minimum wage. You mentioned that is this the first time that we have introduced minimum wage in Malaysia, the 1,700 ringgit per month this year?
The Madani government is the first government that to my knowledge, I could be wrong, that to introduce the minimum wage. And I believe actually this is the second time they're doing it. They did it actually last year. So they're revising it upwards to 1,700 this year. Last year, is it? Yeah, last year when they did it, it was 1,004. Yeah. But my criticism towards the minimum wage, and I do have one, my criticism towards it is it shouldn't be a uniform minimum wage across the whole country. Different countries, they got different cost requirements and so on. So a broad stroke is maybe not such a good thing lah. But the reason for the government doing that, the rationale is they're trying to give people more money to spend. So when people have more money to spend, it circulates around the economy, and it helps businesses to earn money. And also the idea is a higher paid worker. So that also applies to the progressive wage policy. A higher paid worker, in theory, is a happier worker, and they do work harder. Working harder means higher productivity. Higher productivity means more money. So that's the idea that's behind the whole thing. Whether it works or not in practice, I leave it to you to judge. Thanks.
How about girls? No? You won't be taxed. How about people on the Zoom? Hello? Christopher, Vinny, Pammy? No? Well, the time now is 3:35. We're booked for the room to 3:45, unless about 3:36.
Yeah.
Unless we have no more questions, we can ask Voon to give a summary, and then that will take us to the closing. Shall we do that, Voon? Just a quick summary.
Sure. So in summary, this budget will be heavy on businesses. So if you own a business in Malaysia, you're operating it remotely, you will feel some pain points. Try to also look for any cushions that the government will be giving. But yeah, you might. My main criticism towards this few things is it's all happening all at once. It should be done progressively. Doing it all at once is, if you kill a business, then accidentally, it's not so good for the country as well. And this you have to take it in context of what they already introduced last year. So they had capital gains tax last year, right? And there are new taxes introduced this year. So my concluding remarks would be that the government needs to think carefully about how it's doing it. They cannot do everything all at once. I'm actually quite happy that they didn't talk about GST also this time. Otherwise, it would be a little bit too much for businesses to handle. And when businesses go bust, it affects the employees that work for the businesses. They might think about retrenching, and that also is not so good for the economy as a whole. But to give credit where it's due, some of these crunch points are necessary. And I don't want to sound too political, but there has been a backlog of things that we should have done long time ago that we are now trying to do all at one go. So in previous governments, they tried to appease the population. So they will give, well, the petrol subsidy is one clear example. And once you're addicted to subsidy, it's very hard for people to let go. And yeah, so this is something that it has to be done, needs to be done, because although the budget deficit is being lowered in terms of its rate, it's still growing. So owing too much money to government owing too much money is not a good thing in terms of stability in the eyes of the world, especially. So whether this is a good budget or a bad budget, only time will tell. It's very hard to say at this point. But overall, my feel of it is that it is a balanced budget. It's not good, it's not bad. It's not so clear-cut in this case. But that's just my thoughts. And I'll be happy to hear your views about it. If you can give me a comment, and I'll be happy to incorporate your ideas and your points as well. So and lastly, thank you so much to MAUK, my colleagues at MAUK, for giving me this opportunity. It's been fun sharing with you guys, and I hope to interact with you offline as well, especially those of you in UK. Hope to see you there soon. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Voon. I just saw your PK. Yeah, we're picking around and posting. It's amazing, your Forum for Insights, Knowledge and International Relations. PK, wow.
This is
not bad.
This is a think tank, but we haven't actually launched it yet. So thank you, Edmund, for giving me this slot, pushing me to get it started.
Thank you, and I'm sure it will be the first of many of the webinars with the whole across Atlantic as well. Yeah. So well done. Thank you very much to Dean as well for organizing the techie part. And I don't know how many of the other people